Hello and welcome to this poster design tutorial. If you want to create a really dynamic and fresh typographic poster in InDesign, then this is the video for you. So here I am in InDesign and these are some posters I created earlier. In this video, we will be looking at creating a poster for a sneaker company looking to promote its product line, where we will be using photography, typography, and graphic images as part of the poster design. In this video, I'll demonstrate how to use the tools of InDesign to create this poster design specifically, and later we will look at how to make some variations. So to create this poster in InDesign, we are going to cover the following key steps. Step 1, project folder setup. Step 2, document setup. Step 3, grid setup. Step 4, working with type. Step 5, working with image. Step 6, working with color. Step 7, refine composition. Step 8, create layout variations. And step 9, exporting. This is a methodical process that will ensure we create quality poster designs and not leave anything unchecked. So be sure to check the bookmarks in this video so you can jump back or ahead at any time. After this video, you will be able to create dynamic typographic posters like this in Adobe InDesign super easy. So let's get into it. So here I am in InDesign, and these are some dynamic posters I created earlier using the techniques I'm about to demonstrate. If you want to take a look at these, you can find them in the class project folder. These are located in folder 2, poster templates. If you open the all posters InDesign file, you should be able to open them like so. Now for this tutorial, we are going to focus on this poster design here. If I select this poster with the selection tool, then come over to the links panel and click the edit icon at the bottom, we will jump into another InDesign document where we can see variations of the same poster design. So basically, what I had there was an InDesign document with the links inside to other files. This is the file where I created the poster design, but this doc here is just so I can see all my posters at a glance, and each of these is a link to a different document. So in the poster document, what I have done here is develop a poster design from one of my sketches, which I have here. And on the computer, I have looked at how this could work in different variations with different fonts and colors. Now, if I also press W on the keyboard, I will be able to toggle between preview mode and normal mode. In normal mode, you can see the grid system that I used to structure this poster design. So your 11th task for this class is to follow along with my poster design method. The purpose of this task is for those of you who may be unfamiliar with InDesign. This is a chance for you to learn some crucial techniques and get comfortable working in Adobe InDesign. Now, this stage is optional. You can either watch and participate or follow along and develop your own poster design. However, I will be encouraging you to do this later. So let's now jump into InDesign and look at how we can develop a poster like this. And we are going to start with step 1. Now, a quick step I like to take before I begin any project is to first set up a project folder. This is going to set me up to be super organized and have a place to keep all my assets and know where everything is. When working in InDesign, it helps to be organized to improve your workflow. So I can either set this up from scratch or I can duplicate a folder I created earlier. So if you have not already done this yet in the class, come into the class download folder, into the design process folder, and the last folder called project folder will have some additional folders inside. Now these folders are going to help us organize our project. So to begin, I would recommend you copy this folder and paste it somewhere you will be able to access through this part of the class. For now, I'm going to paste all my files into the folder I created earlier in this class. So once you have your project folder set up, let's start artworking our poster. So in InDesign, to begin, I'm going to set up a new document. I'll come up to File, New, and select Document. Now on this occasion, I'm going to use a standard print size document. On the top tab, I'll click Print, I'll click View All Presets, I'll select A3. Over on the right, I'll make sure my orientation is set to portrait. I'll set my units to millimeters. Now this is just my personal preference. You could use whatever unit you feel most comfortable with. I'll deselect facing pages. I'll leave pages set to 1 for now. On this occasion, I'll set my margins to 0. I'll set the bleed to 3 millimeters. And I'll do this because some printers like a 3mm bleed when sending off to print, so I'll just do this at the start. I'll leave my slug set to 0 and click create, and up will pop my new document. So here we have our new document set up, and you can see around the outside we have the bleed line. Now, for those who don't know what that is, it's where you extend your artwork off the canvas area, so when a printer cuts the artwork, they can trim a little bit off so you don't get white borders. Again, if we press W on the keyboard, we can flick between normal and preview mode, and you can see when in preview mode, you cannot see the bleed line. Now, if you're following along, make sure you can see your control panel at the top of your UI. If not, come up to Window and make sure there is a tick next to Control. Now, you're also going to need to have your swatches, layers, and links panel visible, so make sure to come up to Window and click these to activate. Another thing to make sure of is come up to Edit, scroll down to Transparency Blend Space, and make sure to select Document RGB, and this will prevent your images from looking dull when you bring them in. And lastly, if we come up to View, come down to Display Performance, on this occasion, let's make sure to select High Quality Display. So that's our document set up, and before we continue, I like to save it. So I'll come up to File, Save As, navigate to the project folder we set up earlier in the class, into the second folder, Concept and Design, into the Design folder and save it in the InDesign folder as Bolts Surge Step. Okay, so before we start adding any visual elements, I want to set up a grid. Now, looking back at one of my original sketches, I really like this idea here of having a very typographic poster and having the statement "Footwear for the Fearless" run boldly down the left-hand side with the product image in the bottom right. As you can see, I like the idea of the sentence running across 5 lines. Now, this was a really rough sketch initially, but when I looked at this poster design a little closer in my Scamp draft, I worked out that to do this, I would position the type on a baseline grid, and each line would fit into 3 baseline grids like so. So for this poster design, I determined that I would need a baseline grid of 17 for 5 lines to fit into 3 lines and to give me 2 left over for footer elements, one on the top and one on the bottom. And as you can see here, I planned to position all the type elements within the baseline grid structure. So first, I'll set up a simple baseline grid to match my sketch. To do this, I'll come up to Layout and select Create Guides. Upon click, up will pop a menu, and in here we can easily set our parameters. Now, I know I want a baseline grid of 17 on my page. First, I'll make sure preview is checked, and for the rows, I'll type in 17, and for now, I'll set the gutter to 0, click OK, and now the poster canvas is divided into a baseline grid of approximately 17. So with the initial grid set up, we can start to bring in some visual elements. Now, depending on your design, sometimes it can be easier to start with the image elements of a poster. But for this particular design, I want this to be primarily type-based and include the image on top. So to begin, I'm going to start with the type elements in the background. So looking back at my sketch, I want the main heading type of the poster to sit on the left-hand side and run across 5 lines. So let's start with this part. To start, I'll come over to the Tools menu, click on the Type tool, come over and draw a frame to start under the first baseline and drag onto the bottom baseline across the page like so. Upon release, we will have our first frame, which I can place in some type. So at this point, I'll jump into the poster contents doc, and I can do this by coming into the class download folder, into the Bolts Media Kit folder, and double clicking on the content deck shortcut to open in the browser. So on page 3, I'll see the poster text contents. For this poster, I'll go with option 2. I'll copy the title, then back into InDesign, I'll paste it in, and now we have our first bit of type, which is small. So I'll quickly push up the font size to around 50 so we can see what we are working with here. So at this point, I need to look at how I'm going to fit this type into my baseline grid as I designed previously in my Scamp. And also, what typeface am I going to use? So first, let's look at the typeface I'm going to use. So at this point, I could use any typeface, but I already have an idea of what I want to work with. In a previous step, I undertook some typeface research, where I looked at a range of typefaces I'd like to use. Now, on the first page of my research, I quite liked the look of this typeface here. The reason for that is because of its condensed nature, which would allow me to fit the headline onto the page, and if we look at my Scamp, this is how I planned it would work. So to start, I'll apply my font, and here I'm going to start with the typeface Zoom Cut. With its large cap height to letter width, this is a particularly condensed typeface, so a good option if you want to achieve a text-heavy headline in your poster design. Also, this typeface has a very distinct look and feel with its slight indentations, which gives it a bit of a flair. This is a very bold and impactful font and would work really well in this particular design direction. This is an Adobe font, and can be used for free if you have an Adobe account. You can find the link in the Typeface PDF in the class download folder. In folder 1, Design Process, in folder 5, Typography, and if you open the PDF, you can simply click the font and it will take you to the link. Now, if you're watching this and you do not have an Adobe account, for whatever reason, for now, I'd recommend you use BBAS, which is a free font which you can get by clicking on BBAS on the Type PDF. This is another condensed font that should work just fine. So back in InDesign, I'll select the type, and up in the font selector, I'll type in Zoom and apply the font. So next, to adjust the size. So with the typeface selected, I'll just type in 200 points and hit enter. Now I'll just punch up the points until I can see the X height of the letter forms in the top row. I'll fit nicely into 3 rows of the baseline grid, just like my sketch here. Now in doing so, we can see that the leading between the words is way off. So with the type still selected, I'll press and hold Alt and press up on the keyboard until the letter forms fit nicely into 3 baselines, like so. Now we can see we have achieved something very similar to my scamp, and the type is looking really bold there. Now at this stage, we could even tweak the tracking, but I'll leave that for now. Now if I quickly press Escape and then V to activate the selection tool, I can grab the middle frame anchor on the right and pull out to the right, and we will see the words will come across. But in this instance, I actually want the words to cut across into the next line. So this is one occasion I actually want to have hyphenation turned on. Up in the control panel, I'll click the paragraph formatting control button. We can see that in the middle, we have the hyphenation turned on. So I'll move the frame back across so my type breaks into each line like so. Perfect. So now for some quick housekeeping. Over in the layers panel, I'll double click on the layer name and change this to type. So with the biggest piece of type in place, let's look at the next one. So looking back at my scamp, here I also want to include a paragraph of type to the right of my header. Back into InDesign, I want to place a new text box here on the right. So with the type tool again selected, I'll try and click and drag up to the top right. But when I do that, it's selecting back into the type box. So this time I'll grab the frame tool and draw the box, and it should place the box here with no problem. Next, I'll select the type tool and click once into the box. Back into my content document, I'll copy the paragraph text. Back into InDesign, I'll paste and push the type up to 25 points so I can see it. So now things are starting to get a little loose here on my page. My main headline is positioned nicely in the baseline grid, but now we have this paragraph text box. Where am I going to position it? So I have my baseline grid looking at how I manage things vertically, but what about horizontally? Now I didn't think about this in the sketch, but as I look to bring it to life here, I could think about this now. So a solution here would be to bring in a column grid to give some structure. So at this point, I'll come up to Layout, click Margins and Columns, and up will pop a menu. So I'll go ahead and look at how many columns I can use. So first I'll make sure that the preview tick is selected, and I'll type 5 into the column number and click into the gutter to apply. Now, I don't think this is looking right. My problem here is it looks like the headline has nowhere to sit on the left side of the page. So here I'll look to add a margin, but only on the left and right. So I'll come up to margin and make sure that there is a line through the lock so they are not all the same. Then on the left, I'll push this up to 20 as I like to have a round number, and I think that looks good. So I'll type 20 for the right, and that looks like a nice space on the left and right for my margin space. However, I still don't think I have adequate columns for the new text box. Sometimes when it comes to columns, you have to play around with this a little. So I'll go ahead and type 7 this time, and I think that's looking a lot more promising. See here, I have 2 columns here where I can place my elements down the right hand side. Lastly, I'll bring the gutter space down, I'll type 2 millimeters, I'll click OK, move my headline so it sits nicely on the left margin, and resize my new paragraph frame to sit into the 2 far right columns. And I think this is beginning to work. Keep in mind that sometimes you will have to make some adjustments to grids and things on the fly as you develop your composition. Even though I had a good idea of the baseline grid from my scamp, I didn't think about the columns. So when working this up in software, I needed to solve this problem here. Okay, so this sorts out my grid structure for this poster. Time to bring in my next type elements. So looking back at the scamp, there are some footer elements and some other type elements, but next I'll look to place in the footer elements. So looking at the scamp, I want to include 3 lines of type, which I can see are on the copy deck. Now I want these to sit equidistant from each other at the base of the poster design. Now the most straightforward way to do this is to use a simple table. In my poster, I'll select the frame tool, I'll draw a frame from the left margin on the last baseline and drag to the bottom right margin of the poster. So having this new column grid here is really helping me. Next, I'll select the type tool and click into the frame. I'll come up to table and click insert table. I know my body rows will be 1 and I'll set the columns to 3 and click OK, and there is my table. Now I'll click on my selection tool, which will select the frame, and I'll come over to the middle of the control panel and click Align Center. And now the table will sit nicely in the middle of the frame, sitting perfectly in the bottom baseline space. Perfect. Now I'll just come into the copy deck and select each footer one at a time. Come back into the poster, click the type tool, click into the table and paste in its contents. And I'll do this for the middle cell and the far right cell. So right now the type is justified to the left in each table cell. So with the type tool, I'll click into the middle table cell, and up in the control panel, I'll set the text to Align Center. I'll click into the third cell, and up in the control panel, I'll select the text to Align Right. Next, with the type tool, I'll click into the first cell and drag across into the third frame, so it's all selected. Then up in the control panel, I'll make sure that all the lines are blue in the table stroke box, and set the table stroke to 0. I'll click the selection tool to deselect, then press W to enter into preview mode, and now we can see the type in the footer is positioned exactly how I want it. Perfect. So before we move on, let's look at the typeface for these two new type elements. So the font I'm using for the headline is Zoom, but this is an uppercase font only, and I do not want the paragraph font to be uppercase as well, so I'm going to need to apply a different font. So to complement the bold sans serif typeface in the header, I think I'm going to look for a clean sans serif typeface for the other type elements, but nothing that is going to compete too much. So looking back at my type sheet, on the first page there is one typeface I thought looked like it could work well. For my body copy, I chose to go with a typeface called Degula. This looks like a nice clean sans serif with a nice look and feel to it, and it has a very subtle personality and flair that will work well in my design to complement the header typeface. This is another Adobe font and can be used for free if you have an Adobe account. If you open the Type Research PDF, you can simply click the font and it will take you to the link. And if you don't have an Adobe account, for whatever reason, for now I'd recommend you use Archivo, which is a free Google font which you can get by clicking Archivo on the Type PDF. So back into InDesign, I'll select the paragraph frame once and then double click into it and dive into the type selection. I'll press Command A for Mac or Control A for PC, and up in the font section, I'll type in Degula and select medium. I'll hit the paragraph formatting button and deselect hyphenation, and just press Escape to deselect the type, and I'll leave the type as it is for now. Next, I'll select the type tool, click once into the first cell of the table and drag across to select all. Up in the font selector, I'll type in Degula and choose medium. I'll set the size to 18. Then I'll come to type, scroll down to change case and select uppercase. I'll click on the selection tool to deselect and press W to enter into preview mode, and that's looking good so far. But I'll quickly double click into the first frame to select the type. I'll click and drag to select all three, and I'll press and hold Alt and press right 5 times to push out the tracking a bit to give the type some more space. I'll click on the selection tool again to deselect, and that is looking good so far. So looking back at the sketch, I can see that I also want the web address to be in the top left. So an easy way to do this will be to duplicate the type below. So I'll press W to go back into normal mode. With the selection tool, I'll click on the bottom footer frame, and while holding Alt, I'll drag it up and place it into the top baseline space to make a quick duplicate. Easy. So now in my copy doc, I'll select the web address, and with the type tool, I'll select all 3 frames and press delete to remove the type. Then I'll click once back into the first cell and paste, and it will sit in there nicely. So looking back at the sketch, there was another type element I wanted to include, and that is the product number and name of the sneaker as a design element to sit in the bottom right of the poster, next to the product image, but aligned vertically. Also, on the sketch, I wanted this to be in uppercase, similar to the main header font. So on this occasion, I'm going to look to use the same font as the header. So back into InDesign, I'll press W to enter into normal mode. With the selection tool, I'll click on the header frame, press and hold Alt and drag to the right to drag a copy into the pasteboard area. I'll come into the poster content deck, product name page, and I'll select the name for Surge Step, copy and back into InDesign, paste it in like so. And on this occasion, it will completely disappear because the type is now too large for the frame. So with the frame selected, I'll come up to Window and select Properties. In the Properties window, I'll come down to type size and set this to 50, and now we can see the type inside. So right now I have my type and a huge frame around it. A quick tip here, if you have a type box with only a small amount of type in it, if you double click on the bottom right anchor point, the frame will snap to hug the type inside, which will make it a lot easier to work with. Great. So I'll drag the new type element into the poster. I'll press R to activate the rotation tool. I'll place my mouse cursor next to the bottom right anchor point and click and drag up and hold Shift to snap to approximately 90 degrees. I'll press V to activate the selection tool, and I'll drag it down to sit against my grid comfortably in the bottom right like so. So now looking at my sketch, I also want this weight to be different here. So I'll use the text tool to select the first 4 letters. I'll come up to the drop down on the font family and change this to light, and that's created a nice bit of contrast there. Also, you may have seen that the type no longer fits in the frame. So I'll zoom in and use the selection tool to grab the middle anchor, and I'll just drag it up like so. Now on this occasion, I want to try a different style and effect for this. So with the type tool, I'll select Surge Step, then over in the Tools panel, I'll make sure the type icon is selected, and I'll click the Swap, Fill and Stroke to set a stroke effect to the type instead. I'll come over to the Stroke panel and set this to 0.5. I'll click on the Selection tool and click off to deselect and press Command+0 on Mac or Control+0 on PC to fit the canvas area to my work area, and we can get a good look at this. And our main type elements are now composed on our poster. I'll press W and we can see that the header sits perfectly in the baseline grid on the left margin. The paragraph sits nicely in the last 2 columns comfortably, and the footer elements sit in the bottom and top baseline space perfectly. So right now I feel the type is working and is in a good spot, and I can begin to think about working with images. So looking back at my sketch, we can see that for this poster, I want to include an image of the product at the bottom right. Now, looking at the content deck, on the product lineup page, there is a product here called Surge Step. And this is the one I thought would work well in this poster composition. Looking at my poster design, I plan to have this sitting in the bottom right in that space next to the type, and possibly cover some of the type to achieve some dynamic layering to suggest a clear visual hierarchy to get you to look at it first. So let's see how we can get this image into our poster. So first, let's jump into the class download folder and into the Bolt Media Kit folder. This is the folder that the client has supplied, which includes everything we need to design the posters. So I'll come into the product images folder and start by opening the Surge Step image in Photoshop. So this is the product image that has been supplied to us. And right now, as it stands, this image is not going to work because for my design, I want to have the image cut out. So for this poster design, I'm going to have to cut the sneaker out first. So thankfully, this is a very clear image here, and it should be very straightforward to cut this out. So I'll just zoom in here to get a better view. What I can do is come over to the rectangle marquee tool. I'll draw a selection around it, and up in the control panel and click Select and Mask. Up in the control panel again, I'll click Select Subject, and Photoshop will do its best to select the sneaker. Now, if I zoom in here, I can see that it's not perfect. Now, there is another thing that you can do here. Over in the Tools menu, there's a button here called Object Selection Tool. If I click this and move my mouse over the sneaker, Photoshop will see what I'm trying to select as an object. If I click this once, I will see all the imperfect bits have magically been brought back, and that is looking a lot better. Now, if I zoom in on this, I can still see some bits that need to be removed. I can do this easily by clicking on the polygon lasso tool, and if I press and hold Alt, the icon will turn to a negative. If I start to click around, once I get back to the start and then double click to commit to the selection, it will take that part away. So I can spend a little more time going around my object here and fine tuning the selection, and once I'm happy with it, I can click OK in the bottom right corner and the selection will be made. With the new selection, I can come over to the Layers panel, and at the bottom I can click the Add Layer Mask button. Upon clicking, I have now added a layer mask and cut out the sneaker. Perfect. Now I don't want the image to be this large. I don't need the space around the sneaker, so I'll come into my Layers panel, press and hold Command on Mac or Control on PC and click on the layer mask. Upon click, a selection around the sneaker will be made, and if I now press C on the keyboard to crop, a crop box will appear around the sneaker. At the top in the control panel, I'll make sure Delete Crop Pixels is unchecked and press Enter twice, and that will crop the image. Perfect. So I'll press Command-Shift-S on Mac or Control-Shift-S on PC to save. I'll navigate to my project folder I set up earlier and save this into the Assets folder and save this as Surge Step PSD. So now I have the sneaker image nice and prepared, I can now bring it into InDesign. So back into InDesign, before I bring in my new images, I'm going to do some housekeeping. So over in the Layers panel, I'll come and click the plus icon on the bottom right. This will add a new layer and I'll call this Images. So now I'll click the lock icon on the type layers so as to not accidentally select anything while I'm dealing with the image I'm about to bring in. So with the images layer selected, I'll press Command D on Mac or Control D on PC on the keyboard to bring in an image. So here I'll navigate to the project folder, into the concept and design folder, into the design folder, into the assets folder and select Surge Step PSD and click Open. Then click and drag a frame like so to drop in the image. Easy. So once the image is in InDesign, it's easy to resize and position. With the image selected, I'll press S on the keyboard and this will activate scale. Now the best practice here is to move your mouse just under the bottom right anchor point, and if I press and hold Shift, then click and drag, you can increase or decrease the image size to scale like so. So I'll just scale up the image until I'm happy and place it in the bottom like so. So that's the first image in my poster. Now if we come across and look in the links panel, we will now see our image in here. It's from here where we can keep an eye on the links inside our document where we can make edits and changes in future. So next I want to bring in another image that will work as a background image. Now as part of the media kit provided, there appears to be a range of graphical textures. For this design, I'd like to use one of these to add some interesting texture to the background. So in InDesign, I'll come over to the layers panel, add a new layer and call this base. And I'll be sure to click and drag this to the bottom so it's under my other layers. And again, I'll hit the lock icon on the image layer to not accidentally select this. So I'll come over to the frame tool, I'll press W to enter into normal mode so I can see the bleed around my canvas area. I'll click and drag a frame from the top of the left bleed corner down to the bottom right. With my frame in place and it's selected, I'll press Command D on Mac or Control D on PC to place in an image. So here I'll navigate to the media kit folder provided, into the texture folder, and I'll select Gel Flux JPEG and click Open. Upon click, this will place into the frame. So right now the image is in the frame, but we can see it's not positioned in the frame correctly. Now if I zoom out here with the frame selected, if I press A, this will activate the direct selection tool. This will then enable me to click into the frame and select the image inside. If you do this correctly, you will see the outline of the image is now visible. So what I'll do here is move my mouse over the middle right anchor point. I'll press and hold Shift plus Alt and then drag to the right carefully. And as I do this, I can scale the image up inside the frame like so. What I'll do here is scale the image up inside to crop more into it like so. Easy. Now, if I press W to enter into preview mode, we can see the image in the background more clearly. And with the image still selected in the frame, I'll press up or down to reposition the image inside to position how I feel it works the best. So the next image I want to bring into this poster is the logo. So I'll press W to go back into normal mode. In the layers panel, I'll hit the lock on the base layer and this time unlock the type and the images layer. I'll select the image layer and press Command D on Mac or Control D on PC to place an image. I'll navigate to the media kit and I'll click into the logo folder and select the Bolts Logo Black EPS file and click Open. So this time I'll come up to the top of the poster, I'll click at the start of the second from last column, click and drag across the last two columns and release. The logo will now be placed inside the poster across two columns, and for now I'll move my paragraph type below to give it some space. So the last image I want to bring into this poster is the little bolt icons to sit in the footer. On the images layer, press Command D on Mac or Control D on PC to place an image. I'll navigate to the media kit, I'll click into the images folder and select the bolt icon, black EPS file and click OK. This time I'll come to the bottom near the footer and click and drag to place in a small bolt icon. Then I'll press S to activate scale, move my mouse cursor to the bottom right and click and drag while holding Shift to scale to a size I'm happy with and place between the first and second footer element. I'll click on the selection tool, click and hold Alt and drag to the right to quickly duplicate the bolt icon and place between the second and third footer text. I'll press Command 0 on Mac or Control 0 on Windows to fit my poster to the view area. I'll press W to go into preview mode and now all the major elements are included in the poster. So up to this point, we have been working to get all our elements into the poster design. At this point, everything is now in the poster, but it's important to keep in mind that nothing is final yet. I still have some tweaking to do to get this all perfect. Now everything is in, we can now start to think about color and finalizing our design. So when it comes to poster design, I typically don't start thinking about color until the overall poster composition is in a good spot. I typically work in black and white, and once everything is in, I can then start sampling colors and applying colors. So the first thing I'm going to address is the background. I like the texture, but right now I think it's way too vibrant and takes away from the impact of the type and sneaker image. So I'll come into the layers panel, unlock the base layer. I'll select the background image frame, come into the links panel, click the edit original button, and for me, it'll open in Photoshop. So for this image, I want to transform it into a black image so I can really punch out the type on top. So I'll come down to the bottom of the layers panel, hit the adjustment layer icon and select black and white. I'll then press Command-Shift-N on Mac or Control-Shift-N on PC to create a new layer. I'll come to the paint bucket tool. I'll make sure to set to 100% up in the control panel. I'll set my fill color to black and click once to fill this in. And I'll set the layer opacity to 80% for now. So I'll press Command S on Mac or Control S on PC to save. I'll navigate to the project folder, into the concept and design folder, into the design folder, into the assets folder, and save this as gelflux.psd. Now back in InDesign, I'm going to replace the current image in the background with the new image I just created. So there are a few ways we could do this. One is to come into the links panel, right click on the link and select relink, and navigate to the project folder, into the concept and design folder, into the design folder, into the assets folder, and select the doc I just created, gelfluxblack.psd. Click open, and now that will update in our InDesign. But right now it's looking a bit flat. So with the image selected, I'll click again in the edit original image to jump back into Photoshop. So this time I want to add more contrast to the image. So with the black and white adjustment layer selected, I'll come down and this time add a levels adjustment layer and pull the right handles in to increase the blacks. I'll change the opacity of the black layer on top from 80 to 60%. I'll press Command W on Mac or Control W on Windows to close and save. Then back into InDesign, the image will update and we can now see a more dynamic image in the background. Great. So now I'm going to change all my type to white real quick. With the selection tool, I'll click the headline frame, press and hold shift and select the paragraph frame next to it. With them both selected, I can come over to the fill and background color in the tools menu and make sure to click the T symbol below. This will make it so whatever color I set here will apply to the text. So I'll come over to the swatches panel and set this to white. Once set, I'll select the type tool, click once over the top footer element to click into it. I'll then press Command A on Mac or Control A on PC to select all. Again, make sure the type icon is clicked on under the fill and background color and set the fill color to white. I'll click once into the left footer element at the bottom to click into the cell, then drag across to select all three. Again, make sure the type icon is clicked on under the fill and background color and set the fill color to white. Then click off with the selection tool to deselect. Next, with the type tool, I'll click into the product name frame. I'll select the first four letters and change the fill color to white. Then I'll select the rest, click on the stroke color and set this to white. Perfect. Okay, so now all the type elements are set to white. I need to change the color of the logo and the bolt icons below. So again, these are all links inside InDesign. This time, if I press A on the keyboard to activate the direct selection tool, I can click directly on the logo. Then over in the links panel, this will be selected. I'll right click and click relink. I'll navigate to the media kit folder in the logo folder and change the link to the white logo version. Easy. Okay, so for the last two bolt icons at the top, I'll do the same as before. I'll come into the links panel, and here I can see there are two instances of the bolt icons. So I'll right click and click on the top to select relink all instances. I'll navigate to the media kit folder in the icons folder and change the link to the white bolt version. And back in InDesign, they will be updated. Easy. Okay, so now we can see that the visual elements are really standing out on that black background. Now, I'm not going to leave it there. I now want to add some more color to create some contrast to really draw your eye to the main headline. So for my poster design, I don't have any specific colors planned. So in this instance, I'm going to take some reference from the sneaker image. So as we can see, the sneaker image is really colorful. A cool technique we can use in InDesign is to use the color theme tool. So over in the tools menu, I'll click and hold on the eyedropper tool and select the color theme tool. What we can do here is click on various elements on the page to source a theme. So with the tool selected, I'll come and click on the sneaker image, and upon clicking, we will get a new theme in the toolbar. Now, if we click this little arrow button to the right, we will activate a drop down where we can see some additional themes. Here we have colorful, bright, dark, deep, and muted. So in this instance, I'll select bright, and if I click the button to the right of the arrow, this will add the theme to the swatches panel. Now we can see the new bright theme in the color folder in the swatches panel. And here we have some nice orange samples. So with these new colors, I'm going to start applying them. So first I'll select the type tool and click into the paragraph. Then I'll press Command A on Mac or Control A on PC to select all. Again, make sure the type icon is clicked under the fill and background color, and I'll set the color to one of the new bright orange colors in the swatches panel. Next, with the type tool, I'll click into the footer element, press Command A on Mac or Control A on PC to select all. Again, make sure the type icon is clicked under the fill and background color and set the fill color to the same bright orange color in the swatches panel. Next, with the type tool, I'll click into the frame with the product name. I'll select the first 4 letters and make sure the type icon is clicked. In the tool menu, click the fill and set this to the same orange color. Then click the selection tool and click off to deselect. So now we are starting to get some nice contrast between the type elements here. So what I'd like to do next is change the color of the bolts down in the footer to the same orange. So I'll come into the swatches panel and double click on the orange color I'm using. And right now the color mode is set to CMYK. If I click to change to RGB, I can see the hex value below. So I'll come and copy this and then hit cancel. I'll come into the links panel, click on the bolt image and click the edit original on the bottom, and it will open in Illustrator. So I'll select the bolt image, come over and double click into the fill color, paste in the value, click OK and save as. I'll navigate to the project folder, into the concept and design folder, into the design folder, into the assets folder, and save this as bolt orange and click save. Back in InDesign, I'll right click on the top bolt icon, right click on the top row and select relink all instances. I'll navigate to the project folder, into the concept and design folder, into the design folder, into the assets folder, and select the new orange bolt and click open, and now the bolts are orange. Now, when working with poster designs with images inside, we can also look to enhance these. So I'll come over to make sure to unlock the images layer. I'll press A to activate the direct selection tool, click on my sneaker image, and then press and hold Alt and double click on the image and it will open in Photoshop. I'll come down and add a levels adjustment layer and pull in the right handle and adjust the middle handle slightly just to punch out the color slightly. So here it is before and after. I'll press Command W on Mac or Control W on PC to close and save, and back into InDesign it will update. So while we are focusing on this sneaker image, I want to now apply an effect, so this gives it a bit of a shadow. So with the selection tool, I'll select the sneaker image, right click, come down to effects, come across and select outer glow. So here I'll make sure the preview box is ticked below, and here I'll set the mode to multiply, the color to black, I'll push the size to 20, I'll set the spread to 10%, and I'll also set the noise to 10%, which will give it a slight grain quality. I'll leave the opacity set to 75% and click OK. So now we have this nice shadow effect, which we can see applied to the type below. This now gives the sneaker a bit more dimension, which I think works nicely. Okay, so if you have been following along up to this point, well done. We have covered a lot of ground here, and this is starting to come together nicely. So now everything is in the poster design and we have the colors applied, we can now take the last step, and that is to refine the composition. Up to this point, we have been focusing on getting all the elements into the poster and applying color. Now we are going to finalize the design by focusing on the details to make sure everything is in place. What we want to do here is scrutinize the typography and the position of all the elements to make sure it's well balanced and it's all neat. So the first thing that stands out to me is the paragraph type. Right now, I think the leading is a bit off. So with the type tool, I'll click into the paragraph frame. I'll press Command A on Mac or Control A on PC to select all. I'll press and hold Alt on the keyboard and press the up arrow to tweak the leading. And I'll do this until I think it's looking more comfortable in that space, which looks to be around 24 points. With Alt still held down, this time I'll press right to increase the tracking to 20 so it's not as cramped. And I'll bring it down a point size to 24. And if there is a widow at the end, I'll just bring in the frame a little, and that will set my ragging on the type to something more balanced. So next, with the type tool, I'll click into the first footer element and drag across to select all. I'll bring the type down to 16 points. I'll click into the top element to bring this down to 16 points, and my type is now looking neat. Now, it's really important to use a grid, but sometimes you have to use your own judgment and your own eye to make sure things align up nicely and work well visually. For example, the product name down here is sitting nicely on the baseline, but I feel in this instance it will work nicely if aligned with the bottom of the headline type. So I'll select the product name frame and nudge this up a little so it aligns more with the bottom of the headline type. And for this detail, I think that works nicely. And since we did this with the bottom type, we can also do this with the logo. Next, I'll select the logo and bring that down to align with the top of the header type, and then select the paragraph type and bring this down to fit nicely below. And the last thing would be to select the sneaker image and then position this in the space. I'll bring this to the right a little so you can see a bit more of the type behind, and also scale down and move down a little so the bottom dips into the baseline of the header to again add some more depth and dynamics to the composition. After a few refinements and finessing, we should have our first poster draft complete. Perfect! So right now I'm happy with this, and I think this does justice to my original scamp design. But do we want to leave it there? Generally, when I do any design, sometimes I will have other ideas as I go through the artwork process. And one thing I like to do when designing posters is to look at other options, should there be a better solution out there. So once I have one layout design in a good place with my type and image elements, it can be easy to quickly generate other layout variations. So let's quickly look at how we can do this in InDesign. So first, let's look to duplicate the first page. And this can be done easily by coming to the Pages panel. So in the Pages panel, we can see my page. Now, a quick tip here, if you come up to the main menu, in the top right of the panel, click this and select Panel Options at the bottom. You can change your thumbnail sizes. Right now, I have mine set to extra large and large. So with your first page visible, right click and select Duplicate Spread. Upon clicking, that will duplicate it, and we will now have another page below. So when you duplicate a spread in InDesign, it will set it below by default, but I like to look at my posters side by side to compare at a glance. So if you come to the Pages panel, click back on the menu, and this time click on Allow Document Pages to Shuffle to essentially uncheck the tick. Once you have done that, you are now able to click on a page in the Pages panel and drag it up directly next to the first page. Now, when you do this, you will see the two posters are now directly side by side. Now, a quick fix for this is to come up to the Page tool in the toolbar, and with this selected, you can click on the right page and just drag to the right to move it away. Now, before you do this, be sure to click the Objects Move with Page checkbox up in the Control panel. So then, as you move the page to the side, all the contents will move with it. Easy. Once you have done this correctly and press W to enter into preview mode, you can now see two posters next to each other side by side, as opposed to on top of each other. Perfect. So with the second poster in place, we can now make some modifications to this one. Now, one of the easiest changes to look out for would be the font of the headline. Looking back at my typeface research, there was one typeface that stood out to me, and this was called Tanker. This one has the same condensed quality as the first choice, but with a more rounded feel. This is a font that can be acquired for free. If you open the Type Research PDF, you can click on the font and it will take you to the link. So in InDesign, with the selection tool, I can click the type headline frame once and then double click to enter into the frame. I'll press Command A on Mac or Control A on PC to select all. Then into the font selection, I'll type in Tanker. I'll choose it from the list and it will change, and I'll have to do some tweaking to make it fit there. So with the selection tool, I'll move up the type so the first line fits into the three baselines. I'll pull out the type frames to the right to extend the type inside, and I may have to pull it down as well to get the last of the type. And I'll click inside, press Command A on Mac or Control A on PC to select all, and while holding Alt, I'll click left once to reduce the tracking a little, and I'll reduce the font size to around 240. So now I have another version of my poster with a different font. So let's try something different here. So I'll click into the type, select the word footwear at the top and change this to orange. I'll click on the selection tool and click off to preview. And here we have another version with a new font and color applied to the first word to create more dynamic contrast. So while we are on the topic of looking at fonts, I'll come into the page panel, right click the first page, duplicate the spread, click and move it up along the second poster, click the page tool, click and move it to the right, So another typeface I liked the look of was one called Anton. This one has a more punchy simplicity to it. This is another font that can be acquired for free. If you open the Type Research PDF, you can simply click the font and it will take you to the Google font link. So back into InDesign, select the header text and change it to Anton. Now this time the font is not in all caps. Right now the type is in lowercase, so with it selected, I'll come into the control panel and click the all caps button. Again, I'll need to tweak the type size inside to fit. I'll set the font to 210 and adjust the frame and tracking to fit. Now once the type is placed inside correctly, I'll come to the selection tool, select the top word in the headline, come over and click the swap fill stroke button to apply a stroke effect to the type. Then I'll come into the stroke panel and set this to 3. I'll click off and press tab to toggle away the menus, and here we can see 3 posters with 3 different fonts with various color treatments. So when it comes to poster design, once you have set up one poster composition, it is super easy to make variations and explore other options. Now you can keep going with this. So looking back at my original file, you can see here that there are 3 other versions. To do this is really easy. So once you have a row of posters, you can come to the Pages panel, click on the first poster, press and hold Shift on the keyboard and select all 3, right click and press Duplicate Spread. By doing this, you will now duplicate the entire new row of the same posters below, which you can now continue to make tweaks to. Now, I won't go into detail about how I did these, as by now I'm sure you will know how to do this. But quickly, to make these, I simply edited the background images to add color. So if we look at the gray background here, in Photoshop we can see it's the same image as before, but with different color layers applied. Here, instead of black, I have a lighter gray. Same with the green and same with the blue. And one of these variations, you can see how I have changed the color of some of the elements to balance the colors. So now I have 6 options of the same poster to choose from. Awesome! Now before we finish this tutorial, there is one last thing we will need to do, and that is to export our poster ready for print. So doing this is really easy in InDesign. Once you are happy with your artwork and you want to export, you can either export the entire document or you can export just one poster. For this example, I just want to export the second poster here. So when you are ready to export, simply hit Command E on Mac or Control E on Windows and a menu will appear. So here I'll navigate to the project folder and select the PDFs folder, and down in the format I'll choose Adobe PDF, Print, click Save, and up will pop a menu. So here I'm going to make sure that high quality print is selected. For the range, I'll set this to 2 as I just want to export the second poster. I'll export them as pages. For viewing, I'll click to height. I'll click View PDF after exporting. I'll come over to the left and click Marks and Bleeds and click only on crop marks. For bleed and slug, I'll set this to use document bleed settings and then click Export. Then InDesign will do its thing and up will pop Acrobat Reader, and now I can see the poster design exported as a PDF ready to send onto the printer. If you notice around the outside, we can also see the crop marks, and this is where the printer will trim the poster after printing to ensure a clean cut with no white edges. Perfect. So that's how you can go from a really rough sketch on a page to drafting a more accurate scamp, to artworking a dynamic typographic poster in InDesign, and managing the elements to create variations within the same document and export ready for print. So now you have seen how to set up and create a poster design in InDesign. Your 12th task is to craft a poster design of your own design. If you have been following along and have sketched out some of your own designs, take some time to develop your own poster design. Be sure to refer to the task list PDF in the class download folder for more instructions for this task. Also, feel free to try a completely different design approach using different colors and assets from the media kit. Now try and spend around an hour or 2 on this exercise. And if you do create your own designs, be sure to share them in the project section below so we can all see your designs. We would all love to see what you can come up with. So this is one of many poster designs I have created in Adobe InDesign. If you want to save yourself some time and use these poster design templates, you can get them as part of the poster design ebook. The poster design ebook includes crucial design theory to help you create professional poster designs with lots of design resources, more tutorials, and includes all the poster design tutorial assets. If you want to learn more, you can check the link in the description. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe, and hit that bell button to be notified of more tutorial videos like this in future. Now, this tutorial was created for all my members of the GDS Design School community. If you would like to join the GDS Design School community, where we chat about design, give each other feedback, and where I set design challenges, you're all welcome to join for free. Again, link is in the description, and I look forward to seeing you there. So, until my next tutorial, unleash your creativity, and I'll see you next time.